This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
You go find the best people, you give them the best tools, and then you get the hell out of their way, and you let them do their job. And sometimes getting out of the way is the hardest part of it.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of Do It for a Living. I'm Kevin Dubois. This week we've got a really awesome guest for us. It's Paul Scooter Brothers. He goes by Scooter, and he is the owner of the Comp Performance Group. And I'm sure everybody has heard of some or many or all of these companies. Obviously, Comp Cams is a big one that the name, I guess, is derived from. And in our performance import world, a big one is Quartermaster. Scooter, how are you doing today?
I'm doing just fine. How are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's a nice day out here, and we're just getting started. So we're doing this in the morning. Sometimes we do them at night, but I like the morning ones more.
Well, me too. And it is a lovely day in Memphis as well. So we got something in common to start with.
There you go. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started, Scooter? Why don't you kind of give us a background of yourself? Tell us how you got involved with cars, and kind of bring us up to the point that you got involved with the Comp Performance Group.
Well, you got to understand I'm an old guy, so we can start back a long ways. My dad was a mechanic, and probably from the time I could walk, I was hanging around with him working on cars. Somewhere my mom showed me a picture of me standing next to him, and I'm holding a wrench up that's almost as long as I am. So I've been around this thing, and the car bug, I'd say, bit me really, really early. And I worked with my dad every afternoon, basically after school, and during the summers and all that, just to learn. And I did pretty much everything in his shop. And I'll tell you one little thing about how that changed. When I got out of high school when I was 13, the day I went in the afternoon and I'm ready to go start working with him for the summer, I walked into his shop and I saw a toolbox I had never seen before. And he was cleaning up some tools and putting them in the toolbox. And I asked him what he was doing. He said, "I'm fixing you a toolbox." I said, "Well, I don't need a toolbox. Yours is right here, and we'll just work out of that." He said, "Well, you don't work here anymore."
Oh.
And I said, "Holy crap. I'm 13 years old, and my dad has just thrown me out and fired me, and I don't know what's going to happen here." But behind the scenes, he knew that it was time for me to take another step, and he had arranged for me to go to work at a Rambler dealership. Maybe people listen to this that don't even know what Ramblers are anymore. But
they're like big old RV or campers, right?
Yeah, there you go. That's what they are today. You're right. But, I worked at a dealership from the time I was 14 until probably about 17 or so, 18 maybe. Then I moved to a line mechanic at a Chevrolet dealership. And then there was a little thing going on in Vietnam that caused a lot of people that age to get involved with. So I went and joined the Navy. And fortunately, when my number got up, they sent me to the Mediterranean and the North Atlantic on a carrier, so I didn't have to go to Vietnam.
Uh-huh.
But I spent those 4 years working on piston engines in airplanes.
Okay.
And, working on the flight deck of a carrier and all that was way, way, way fun.
Was it coincidence that you got into that position of fixing airplanes, or was it something that you kind of looked for?
Well, the Navy was the only place that would guarantee me something in aviation.
Okay.
And I knew that's what I wanted. And with my background and all, kind of understanding everything, I sailed through all the schools and did well. And they kind of let me go where I wanted to go. So okay. I was real fortunate to do that. And it turned out I learned a good lesson there that all engines are basically the same.
Mm-hmm.
The molecules of air and the droplets of fuel, they're not very smart, and they don't know what kind of engine they're about to go into. They just know that they've got a job to do and they're going to go convert to power, and whether it's a wheel or a propeller or whatever it is, it's basically the same fundamentals. So that was a huge step in my life, in my understanding of engines and how things work. So when I got out of the Navy, I knew I didn't want to have a real job again. That was being a line mechanic at a dealership is a tough job. And I had been hanging around with some people and going to races with them and all that prior to the Navy.
Okay.
And when I came out, I went straight to them and said, I got to have a job. So that was with Racing Head Service, which was the original parent company of all of these companies that we've got now.
Okay.
And it began with three guys. John McWhorter was kind of my mentor. He was an engineer at International Harvester here in Memphis. There was a guy named Ivar Smeltniks who worked at a engine rebuilding shop. And there was a guy named Bob Woodard that also worked at International Harvester. And they got together all the money that they could get. They cashed in insurance policies. They did everything. And collectively, they came up with $500. And that's what started the business.
Wow, okay.
They went and bought one used cylinder head resurfacing machine, put it in Ivar's basement, and there began Racing Head Service in about 1965. So the time I got out of the service was about 72.
Okay.
And they were ready to grow a little bit, and they had moved. And so I came in and started working with them. And we were doing rebuilding stock cylinder heads for NHRA stock and super stock cars. We did pretty well with it. We would probably at a national meet, we would end up having 70% or so of the class winners.
Okay.
With our cylinder heads. So we gained a pretty good national following.
Making a bunch of them, huh?
We were making a bunch of them.
Okay.
You're right. And from there, there wasn't, in those days, most of the cam companies were out on the West Coast, or, Crane was in Florida. And there wasn't really any other choice. General Kinetics was up in Detroit. But there was a real need for somebody that concentrated on the stock and super stock type applications.
Okay.
So we had talked to Joe Lunati about going together and doing something, and that didn't work out. So we started a company called Cam Dynamics, and it began early on just doing those kinds of cams, and from there branched out comp cams, and that was in probably 76.
Okay.
And I was still at RHS at the time. Comp cams was over here doing their thing, and comp cams grew very, very rapidly. And there was a need for me to come over from RHS to comp cams and start research and development and just grow into some other areas. So I did that. Ivar's basically took Racing Head Service and went his own way.
Okay.
So here we are, probably in the mid 80s by this time. I'm concentrating on building a research and development department here at Comp Cams. And I went out and started hiring some engineers and looking at some things. And I spent a lot of time with racers trying to decide what their problem was. You tell me what your problem is, and then let me go find a solution. And that's kind of what we did. We based the fundamental premise of the company on fixing problems.
Okay.
And that grew and grew and grew, and as we fixed problems, sometimes we created other problems that we had to fix. Maybe their problem is engine won't turn enough RPM, so we smooth out the valve train and get it to turn the RPM, and then something else breaks as a result, so we got to go work on that.
Right.
And, it's just you keep raising the bar, and that kind of got us to the early stages of comp cams and my involvement in the business.
Okay. And now the customers at that time, were they strictly racers, or were you making street cams as well?
No, at the time they were strictly racers.
Okay.
At that point, we had no idea that we were ever going to get into street stuff. It's like a lot of companies. you don't know what you're going to be when you grow up, and you have to be astute enough to see that there's an opportunity. You know, I tell my guys that there's gold nuggets everywhere. Everywhere there's gold nuggets, some little ones, some big ones, and most of the time we spend our day walking over them, you know, going out of our way to get around them. They're a pain in the ass, these gold nuggets are. But all you got to do is reach down and pick them up. And that led us to the street thing. You know, all of a sudden we'd have street guys saying, "Can you do a cam for me?" And this was about the time that there was the energy crisis and all this kind of mess. And so we were working on how to make a cam that would increase the mileage. And, you know, we didn't realize that wasn't really the direction that we were going to go, but it was a start working with that group of people.
Okay.
And the deeper we got and the more we listened, we figured out that they really wanted something else. So, you know, that just set us down another path, and we began the performance side of what we do with the camshafts and the valve trains.
And so the street stuff is obviously a bulk of what you're doing now. I mean, obviously there's a lot of racers, but there's far more street cars than there are race cars, right?
Well, that's true, but you know, the cars that you go and buy today, they're pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I'm going to say 65% maybe of our stuff is race.
Oh wow, okay. So still a majority of it then, huh?
Well, and you know, there's a real fine line. If I'm a guy that's, you know, goes to test and tune every now and then, and he's got a car and he's built an engine and he's spent a lot of money, you know, in his mind, is it a race car or a street car? You know,
right.
He thinks it's a race car, and you'd be insulting if you told him it was a street car.
Right.
So there's a gray area where it could be kind of either way, and I'm not sure the engine knows the difference. So it's hard to say, but I'd say at least the over half of what we do, I think we could pretty well call a race part.
Okay. So do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur? Was starting, you know, or getting involved in this business and then, you know, ramping it up, was that something that you really set out to do, or is it just by coincidence?
Well, you know, I'd say it's like going to a drag strip. Do you know anybody that's ever gone to a drag strip that said they don't want to go faster? You know,
right.
So every day we want to do a little better, and you know, tomorrow I want to be a little better than today, and the next day a little better than then, and that just sort of leads you down the path of those gold nuggets I was talking about, and you pick them up, and sometimes you look down and there's a gold nugget that's another market, or it's another company, an acquisition, or it's you don't ever know what it is, but you know something inside of you says pick up the nuggets, and that's kind of what drives me. I want to continue to pick up nuggets, and I guess that's what an entrepreneur is.
Yeah. Okay. Good way of putting it. So, how did your involvement in comp? I mean, how did you become the owner of it? You said you were working for the RHS guys.
Yep.
And they were the owners of that company, and you were obviously involved in creating comp out of that. But how did you become the owner of it?
Well, I'm not the owner. I'm one of the owners.
Okay.
I'm a minority owner here at Comp. But
okay.
I had earned, I guess, or the guys at RHS early on offered me some equity just from sweat equity, basically. I had zero money.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in those early RHS days, there was another guy working with us named Gordon Holloway. Neither one of us could afford a car, so we bought an old Volkswagen. We shared the thing because we couldn't afford a car apiece.
Okay.
So we had to share a car, and Gordon still works for us today, by the way. But you know, I had no money, and so I had to earn my way in. And as Comp Cams was formed, and I mentioned that Evars wanted RHS,
mm-hmm.
so I traded my part of RHS for a small part of Comp Cams.
Okay.
And then it just kind of grew from there.
Very cool.
Originally, there were 6 partners in Comp Cams, and today there's just 2 of us, myself and Ron Coleman, but the other ones have either retired or passed away or whatever, but it's I guess by default it's down to the two of us.
And it's a private company. It's not a publicly shared company. So you guys are your shareholders, I guess you would call it, huh?
Yes, just he and I are the shareholders.
Okay. How has location played a role in your success?
Well, it's interesting when you think about right here geographically where we are. I mean, we're here because this is where we were born. It's where we started.
Okay.
And after a while, you get a number of employees, and it's very difficult to ask them to move. And you get infrastructure, and that's the easiest thing to move, but it's still a pain to move. But when you think about it, there's a huge amount of performance part of the market right here in Memphis.
Okay.
When you got comp cams and TCI Automotive, which is our transmission business, there's Hypertech, there's Lenati cams, there's a bunch of businesses that make oval track chassis parts, and there's probably 25 companies right here in Memphis that cater to the racing and high performance world.
Okay. So it's not like you're living in the middle of like Nebraska or something where there's nothing,
No.
right?
No, we got a little bit going on, and there's one other very strategic part of our business that location does work for us. Most racers want their stuff right away.
Mm-hmm.
And we have these people that I call my shipping partners that are literally right across the street from us called Federal Express.
There you go.
And they're pretty good at moving parts around the world.
Uh-huh.
And, we can, if we need to, we can take a part over there at midnight and have it delivered at 8 o'clock the next morning.
Wow. Okay. Because that's a 24-hour like hub, right?
This is their world hub right here.
Okay.
So that's an advantage of being in Memphis that any other part of the world can't do.
Very interesting. And you guys are obviously selling a lot of stuff online. Like that's a big part of your business.
Yeah, it's growing. We're probably a little bit behind because we are a mature company, and we have to unlearn all the nasty habits that we learned getting here before we can take off and start moving online. In fact, we're doing this interview on Skype, and it's the first time in my life I've ever used Skype. So I'm still I like a phone with a dial on it if I can find one.
Right. It's hard to record a phone call over a analog phone like that, though.
It probably is, but we do sell a good bit of stuff online. As I said, part of our problem was we established our whole business in the old traditional distribution channels through the warehouses and so forth. And that's changing kind of by necessity today. So we're out of respect for them and that distribution method, we're kind of moving slowly towards internet distribution, but I'm sure that I'm sure that it'll end up tilting in that direction sooner than later.
So what's the worst experience you've had in business?
Something that probably is really more troubling in general is that you want to trust people and believe in people, and sometimes they just let you down. I mean, we've had some customers that have been really good customers for a long time that we did a lot of business with, and one day they send you a thing and said, sorry, we're closing up and we're not going to be able to pay you. And I mean, I guess if you're lucky, they send you that note. If you're not lucky,
right.
you just find out that they're gone. But it's disappointing that you can't trust a lot of people, and that's probably a tough one. Another tough one that I had, and it's just a personal experience, is when I moved from racing head service over to comp cams. I had built a lot of really good personal relationships with some of my customers.
Okay.
And when I moved, I sort of felt like I left them high and dry and abandoned them. And that was a tough one for me, but we all worked through that, and it turned out fine. But at the time, it seemed like it was a disaster, but it worked out fine.
What's something you guys are doing right now that has you fired up?
Well, at Comp, we've always wanted to reinvent everything we do as quickly as we can. And a number of years ago, we pretty much reinvented the service level of delivery to our customers.
Okay.
And we started a deal where you can get a special grind cam in 24 hours.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Other companies were begging me not to do it. They said, well, we get $100 for that. I said, well, I'm not smart enough to do that. So what we did is built our system where every cam was processed the same way, and not in the grinding areas, but as far as moving it through the shop. So we didn't have any backlog, and they just all flowed through, and we shipped them the same day.
Wow. Okay.
Well, as happens a lot of times, we got lazy and took our eye off the ball, and we became a victim of our own success, because all of a sudden people are raising Cain because, now it's taking you 2 or 3 days. And other companies popped in and said, well, I know what they did, so I'm going to pick up the slack. So we actually gave a lot of business away to some other companies during that period of time.
Wow. Okay.
Well, in the last year, we just decided that we're not going to put up with that anymore, and we're going to reinvent ourselves and reinvent the customer service level of things. And we've done that. And I tell you, it's been very satisfying. I was a few weeks ago at the SEMA show, and I had a number of customers come up and say, I don't know what you did to fix the problem, but keep doing it. And so it is satisfying to know that all this effort we've put into it, that the customers see it. And we didn't really brag about it or anything like that. We just wanted to let the proof be in the pudding, and seems like it's working out fairly well.
So you were really looking at your manufacturing process and looking for bottlenecks and changing the system, or the process as a whole, so that way you didn't have to have a 2 or 3 day wait for a cam. You're trying to get it all done in 24 hours
That's
or
right.
less, right?
And and in the middle of all this, we changed our software that runs our business.
Okay.
Which anybody that's ever done that knows that's they'll tell you that it's going to cost one amount and it's probably going to cost triple, and they'll tell you it's going to take this much time, but it'll take 4 or 5 times that long.
Yep.
But we went through that. At the same time, we went and bought a rather large building and moved all of our distribution into that. So we did 3 or 4 really major things that got us off track, and we had to go back and fix them all one at a time. So today, we're in pretty good shape on all that. Our service level is back where it belongs, and that's kind of helped us reinvent ourselves and back to the future, I guess. We turned back to what we used to be, and it seems to be working quite well.
Very good. It's great to hear that. So let's pause for a second. We all know owning a shop is difficult, so we created My Shop Assist to help you manage the various jobs. Whether you run a machine shop, a performance tuning shop, build off-road trucks, or even do powder coating, My Shop Assist can help you. It is completely online and will help you schedule the jobs, log time on each task, track parts orders, and take pictures of the work. You can even export your jobs from My Shop Assist into QuickBooks as invoices. So if you're interested to improve operations at your shop, check out myshopassist.com to start your 30-day free trial. Okay, so Scooter, we started to get into it, but I want to talk about the Comp Performance Group itself. And you said you just moved into a new, bigger facility. How big is that facility, and do you guys rent it or did you buy it?
Well, we've got several facilities. Our main campus here, where we do our manufacturing and have our engineering and have our main corporate office. It's we've been in this building probably, 30 years.
Okay.
And we bought it and had to redo it and build it into what we want. And anybody that's ever been in a manufacturing world knows that you never get it exactly where you want it. You're constantly changing things and moving things. But this building is, I don't know, there's several different sections of it. It's probably about 200,000 square feet.
Okay, so very large.
Well, I'm getting to that.
Okay.
Then I told you the building that we bought to make our distribution center for all of our brands, it's just under 300,000 feet.
Okay.
And we bought that about 2 years ago and went in and redid the building. And you know that you've bought a big building when the first thing you have to do is put a roof on it, and they tell you that cost $1 million. So that's not always a good thing to learn. But then we have about I'm going to say 65,000 feet maybe in Ashland, Mississippi, which is our TCI, or Transmission and Torque Converter Company.
Okay.
There's about 25,000 square feet in Chicago, which is Quartermaster. And there's about 40,000 feet in Bronson, Michigan, which is our facility that does a lot of our manufacturing of our small parts like rocker arms and lifters and things like that.
Okay.
So we're spread out all over the Midwest, I guess you could say. And there's something like a total maybe of, it's over 500,000 square feet. We own all the building. Well, we don't own the quartermaster or the building in Bronson. So there's about 60,000 feet that we rent, but the rest of it we own.
And have you guys ever written a formal business plan? I mean, obviously you're a very large company now, so I would assume you have some type of formal plan in place.
You do have a formal plan, but it's probably not as formal as some of the Harvard business schools or something like that would tell you to do.
Right.
Again, if I look out there and I'm looking down this little path going out to the parking lot and I'm seeing all these gold nuggets, and it's hard to write a business plan that says, go 3 feet and pick up that nugget and step over the next one and go get that one. And so really your business plan is to search for gold nuggets and pick them up.
Okay.
And we do that at all different levels. I'm really fortunate here that my partner and I have worked hard to develop a management team. Pretty much runs the business.
Okay.
They let us think we do, but they pretty much run it.
All right.
And, Ron and I can go look farther. We can go to the next block and look for nuggets while the management team has to look here locally. And, Ron and I look for opportunities that are 3 to 5 to 7 years out. And the management team guys look for the day-to-day nuggets and try and gather them up like that.
And so you're touching on your management team. I mean, how many employees does your companies have? And then you're using the management team to manage them. Has that worked out pretty well for you?
Well, it does. I mean, we have, I'm not sure, probably just over 400 people altogether. And when you get to anything close to that level, there's no possible way you can manage them. 2 people couldn't manage them. That'd be crazy.
Right.
So we break it down into several levels of management. The first level is 3, and then it goes down to sub-managers, and they really get to know the employees and so forth. And, many years ago, I had a friend who was on the board of directors of Chrysler, and we used to sit and talk about what ifs and this and that all the time. And he taught me what I consider the golden rule of management. He said, you go find the best people, you give them the best tools, and then you get the hell out of their way, and you let them do their job. And sometimes getting out of the way is the hardest part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to just sort of sit here and spend my time looking way out, and the management team and their employees, they do things their way. We kind of all understand the general direction. They may not do it the way I would do it, but they have tools that are so much more powerful than I ever grew up knowing. I could pull out my slide rule and work a math problem on a slide rule. And, I can do it on a calculator or computer as well, but I learned on the slide rule.
Right.
And they didn't. So their tools are much better than mine. They can get a lot more done a lot easier than I could. So even though they don't do it my way, they find good ways to do it too. So as long as we have a pretty much a meeting of the minds on the overall direction, it works out really well.
And so what are the primary tools you're using to manage the business? I know you just said you put in a new piece of software that costs a lot more and takes a lot longer to do, but what is that? Is that kind of the overarching, I guess, management tool?
Software is an interesting thing. You spend most of your life working for a piece of software, and about the time you get it perfected to the point where it works for you, then it's outdated and you got to change it again. But yeah, we have an ERP software, and then the modules down from there that pretty much help us run the day-to-day things of the business. There's no way that you could ever do it on a spreadsheet or any other way. You have to have something that's smarter than we are keeping up with it.
Awesome. And your sales model, I mean, you kind of touched on this a little bit as well. So you are using wholesalers and, distribution warehouses. Do you guys do direct-to-shop sales or direct-to-consumer stuff through the web page? What else? How do you guys sell everything?
Well, my sales manager has has a saying that he uses is take the money. And, it's not what the traditional distribution model wanted to do. They would say everything has to go through the 3-tiered structure and everybody has to clip the ticket and make their money. But today, with the internet and the customer, and call the customer what you will, whether it's an engine builder or a consumer or whoever it is, they get on there and study on the internet. They study about the parts and they make their decisions before they ever before they ever call us.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the ones that are making the decision of where they're going to spend their money. We don't make that decision anymore. The decision used to be you sell it to a warehouse and they sell it to a jobber and that jobber sells it to a consumer.
Mm-hmm.
Well, today, the last guy, the guy on the end, the guy that throws the box away, he's the one that's gotten on the internet and studied about the products, and he's made the decision, I want to buy a CompCams XYZ. And so he may call his engine builder and buy it. He may call his a jobber or a speed shop and buy it, or he may call us. But wherever he calls, he's going to decide where to spend the money. When I started in the industry back in the RHS days, I used to have to put those cylinder heads I was talking about in my car and drive them to the bus station to ship them because we didn't really know about UPS and there wasn't a FedEx, and it was very difficult to move parts around.
Okay.
Well, today, as I said, our friends across the street, it's easy for them to move parts around. And it used to, if I wanted to send some money out, I had to go to the post office and buy a money order and fill out an envelope and, God forbid, lick a stamp and put on it and send money like that. And it was very difficult to move information. There wasn't an internet. So the world's so different today that it's necessary for us to change our distribution model to fit what the world is.
Mm-hmm.
I can't expect the world to change to fit what we are.
And so what you're saying, that was really insightful. And what you're saying is it kind of shows how important having a good web page that describes your product is, because your end consumer is going to be doing research, and they're doing the sales without even having a salesperson on your staff. They're doing the research. You just have to provide them with the tool of knowing what to buy of your products, essentially.
That's right. And, again, another principle that I learned very early was the more you tell, the more you sell. And you can tell your story in a lot of ways. And in the old way of doing it, you told your story to warehouses and they told the story down to the next level and the next level. And we'd buy an ad in a magazine or something like that, but you couldn't buy enough ads and buy enough space in a magazine to really do a good description or tell the story of the product.
Mm-hmm.
And today you can do it on the internet. So we have a video studio and we actually produce videos all the time of installation stuff, new product tips. Wow, let me show you this type thing. And that's becoming the way that people want to get their information, is audio and video. Nobody wants to read anymore.
Just show it to them.
Well, that's exactly right. And it's our obligation to do it their way.
Okay.
We got to do whatever they want and tell our story that way. I can't make it their obligation to come, send me $3 or whatever for a catalog and you read my catalog. I got to figure out a way to present it to them where they'll use it and take advantage of it. And, I got to make it easy for them to do business with us wherever they want to do it. If they want to do it with an engine builder, that's fine. If they want to do it with a warehouse, that's fine. Or if they want to do it directly with us, that's fine. But it's become their decision, not our decision.
That's really good. So, and you guys are very rare in that the products you make are domestic is obviously your bread and butter, but you make stuff for imports, and a lot of the stuff has been very successful. Quartermaster clutches in the Evo market that I'm familiar with are one of the best ones you guys run in drag cars, right? So our race cars, almost all of them run a Quartermaster in it. So how do you guys be successful at making stuff for both imports and domestics when a lot of times, there are companies that brand them, even though they may be the exact same product, they brand them as completely different brands just because of the rivalry between the two, I guess, markets?
And they are. You remember early on when I was saying I grew up in the automotive world and went to work in the Navy in the aviation world.
Mm-hmm.
And the engines are, I mean, one of them's round and great big with a propeller on it, and the other one's small and drives a wheel, but they're the same. They do the same thing. You're asking the components to do the same job.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing in the domestic and the import. Now the difference is the language that you speak and how you connect with the customer.
Okay.
It's not any magic the way we ended up with the name Zex for the nitrous company. We thought about the kids at the time. They were kids when this import craze started, and I mean every one of them would love it to be called sex, but you couldn't say that because their mom would find out. So we called it Zex, and it had an appeal. We did a shiny purple bottle. It had an appeal, and so it was a direct connection to that market, even though we weren't personally connected with it.
Mm-hmm.
But we found a way to connect through the visibility of our products. And again, you have to listen to the customer and go back and make what it is that he wants to solve his problem, and the rest of it sort of falls into place.
Yeah. So I guess when you get to the drag racing part, then it becomes, everybody's dealing with the same problems. So the two markets are very similar.
They are. I mean, you have to approach them differently, and you have to make each one feel like they're the most special thing on the planet. If I'll just use Quartermaster as an example. I mean, you've told me that Quartermaster is the company in the Evo market for clutches. Well, they're really the company in NASCAR, but the Evo guys don't give a damn about NASCAR, and the NASCAR guys don't about the Evo guys. But we've taken a product that's almost the same. The fundamentals of the product are exactly the same, and we've been able to market it to two different groups in two different areas.
Very cool. Okay, and this one is a little bit of a bigger picture question here. So the Comp Performance Group is composed of a lot of different companies, and I'm assuming you didn't start every single one of them. You guys are looking at companies to buy, is that correct?
Sure. They're just another nugget out there. I mean, we bought TCI, our transmission and converter company, from Federal Mogul. Federal Mogul is a great big company in Michigan that is mostly in the OE business. They're about a $8 billion company, I guess. And through some acquisitions, they had ended up with TCI. And TCI is a very, very small company to them. I mean, they'll spill more coffee in their offices in a day than TCI is worth. So it was a pain in the ass to them. So we knew some people up there, and we put a deal together to buy it. It fit our model very well.
Okay.
Quartermaster the same way. Quartermaster was part of a great big company on the OE side, and it was a nuisance to them. So we bought that. And so we're constantly looking again at these nuggets, and if a nugget happens to be a company that happens to fit our model, and we can take our manufacturing and our distribution and our marketing and our strengths, engineering, and put our strengths behind a product that happens to be another company. And it's very important that all of our companies are directed towards powertrain performance.
Okay.
I think that enables you to get inside the head of whoever is likely to buy your product, and you're not, I mean, I wouldn't, one time a company came to us and wanted us to buy it, and they made shock absorbers. And there's just not a connection between a guy that's going to buy a shock and a guy that's going to buy a camshaft.
Mm-hmm.
You got to talk to them a different way. I mean, they're both performance, yes, but it just didn't fit our wheelhouse. So we try and stay in the powertrain performance arenas, and if it fits in that concept, then we'll look at it and see what we can do.
Now, are people approaching you for that, or do you guys seek out companies that may fit a need that you guys have?
Well, some people come to us, but next week I'll be going to the PRI show, and part of my job is to walk the show and look at just look. And sometimes I won't, many times I'll see the answer before I even know it's the question. I'll see a little company that's got a really, really cool product, but they've got one product. There's one guy in the company, and they don't have the strength to really make it to be the big time that they need. And they need to partner up with somebody like us.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll either make some arrangement with them to be the exclusive distributor, or we'll end up buying the company, or we'll do whatever. But we look outward at other things that fit our model. And then we oftentimes have people that come to us and say, hey, I've got this model and I can't do it on my own and I need some help, and we'll start it that way. So both ways, either we find it or they find us.
Okay. And you're definitely one of the unique, I think we've maybe only done maybe one or two other companies on this podcast with I guess a conglomerate of multiple companies, under umbrella. So it's kind of very interesting to hear that this is a thing that happens, probably more often than we would think. But, like most of the shops that we're interviewing are not actively sought out to buy other companies or to be purchased, right?
Well, probably so. But, that's, again, you never really know. And it's, I talked a minute ago about our management structure, and my partner Ron and I, we're able to look out at all the other businesses and all the other opportunities and not have to worry about the day-to-day run-ins of the business so much. So we get to go seek out that stuff, where the smaller guys, the single line shops and all that, they spend most of their time concentrating on their day-to-day stuff, and they don't have the opportunity to go out and look around and see what else is available.
And with these companies that you're purchasing, have they all been, are you guys pretty good at turning them and making them successful? Or are they struggling to begin with? Or are they all making money to begin with? How do you improve them to make sure that they are like a profitable company?
Well, I wish I could tell you that they always work like that. Sometimes we buy some stuff. We have bought companies that we just, the way it works is if we can buy a company and bring them in and add them to our software, we can add them to our distribution, we can add them to our phone bank of people. We can do those kinds of things, our marketing, and we can use the strengths that we have in our group to help those companies get better. But sometimes you just can't marry the cultures. And culturally is when they usually don't fit. If the people involved just can't seem to buy into the way that we want to do it,
okay,
then we have to do something else. We bought a company one time that made dynos and flow benches.
Okay.
Very good company. And, I made the mistake of thinking that because we were a customer, we could be an owner. And it just didn't work, because I could not get them to understand the value of customer service.
Okay.
The fundamental principle that we built our business on, they just couldn't buy into. So we pretty much just gave it back to the guy that we bought it from. There's been several of those that just didn't fit for whatever the reason, didn't work. But the big thing, if we can find companies or opportunities that fit our kind of culture, and then use the strengths that we've amassed here in our group, it almost always helps them grow and get better.
Okay, Scooter, you have been involved in SEMA really at all levels. I wanted to talk about a couple things in here first. So, I guess additionally, you do two perspectives of this. First is like a consumer, and then I wanted to talk about the industry as a whole, right? So, as consumers, being involved with SEMA, how do we keep people interested in racing and modifying cars? When the trend with driving in general has become more of a chore than a passion. And I think a lot of this is coming out with autonomous cars, driving people without being involved with it. And, people just not owning cars quite as often. How do we keep the industry alive? And, we also have the government pushing back. The EPA is pushing away from, modifying and racing cars. And, so what can we do to make sure people stay involved?
I spend a lot of my time, too, working with schools and other groups that take our message to kids. And I was on the board of directors of SAE, the Society of Automotive Engineers. Mm-hmm. They actually start at pre-K level to get kids involved.
Okay, I did not even know that. And I was a member of SAE.
Yeah, and they have a huge part of their of the whole organization that just deals with their foundation that goes to kids and brings them along. So, we spend a lot of time doing that. We're planting a lot of seeds now with the youngsters. And again, our whole industry, I think, got lazy, and we lost an entire generation because we were lazy and we didn't take our message to the right people at the right times. And, cars kids today, a lot of them, when we were youngsters, we had to have a car to go to our friend's house, and that was our freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And today their cell phone is their freedom. Facebook is their freedom, on and on and on. They connect in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't have to go somewhere to get to that same level that we did back in our day. So we're now trying to go down. SAE, of course, does it at pre-K, but some of the SEMA things are at high school, and now it's going down a little bit into the grade school level.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just trying to plant seeds at all levels and show people that this is a pretty cool industry, and it's beginning to work. There are some things. A man in Chicago by the name of Jim Bingham started a thing that gets high schools to put teams together to compete to build an engine.
Okay.
Called Hot Rodders of Tomorrow.
Yeah, they do that at PRI every year, right?
They do, and that's kind of the runoff. But they do it at PRI every year, but they also do it hundreds of times at local schools throughout the year that leads up to the PRI thing. And you talk about races. These kids race that deal every bit as much as any Top Fuel car that ever pulled to the starting line, or any Monster Energy Cup NASCAR car that ever took the green flag. These kids are competing just as hard, and they've got the bug. And I think we as an industry realize that we lost that generation, and we've got to work our butts off now to go back and catch the ones that are coming up after them, and make sure that they catch the bug as much as we did.
I touched on the EPA as well. So the RPM Act, everybody's aware of it that is involved in our industry. Do you feel that addresses the issue, or do you think we'll need to be doing more? Because I don't know. Does that solve the problem? Does that allow everybody to do what they want to do?
No, it's I don't know that that'll ever stop. For us as hot rodders, we'd love for them to just say, here's your RPM Act, and it says you go do whatever you want to do. But that's not ever going to happen.
Okay.
The RPM Act is a stopgap thing that, what I learned in my time at SEMA is that the government doesn't play fair. And what they did, what started all this, is they had this bill that addressed something in trucking, and it had nothing to do with performance or cars or anything like that. And they put one little line in there that said something about the race cars, and nobody that was voting on it, none of the congressmen or senators ever probably spent the time to read it, and they certainly didn't understand what it said. And it passed, but it passed based on something totally different. And all of a sudden, the EPA guys, who I guess we had made mad somewhere along the way because we sued them several times, and they came out and said, ha, 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 I got you now. And this just blindsided everybody, and that's when SEMA had to go to work. And I'll say a little bit about SEMA. Obviously I was like you said, I've been involved at a lot of levels, and I was the chairman of the board for a while. And SEMA has an office in Washington, D.C. that most people don't even realize. Got 8 or 10 people that work for them there, and they have a real deep connection, and they work the political side of these things really, really hard. You talk about the RPM Act. Well, there's equally as much pressure to close down racetracks,
mm-hmm.
and that's not a good thing. So, the SEMA guys work at all different levels. Talking about the EPA thing, I think in all fairness, the emissions laws have forced us to all get better.
Yeah, I totally agree there.
We didn't like it. We didn't think we liked it, but it taught us that there's some other things we need to look at. It was not an easy or inexpensive lesson to learn, but it's made everything get better. If you could magically go back to 1965 and go get a brand new not GTO or something and drive it,
mm-hmm.
the thing would probably scare you to death now. We thought then that it was some badass car, but we weren't smart enough to know that's the best we'd ever seen. But, tires are better, shocks are better, everything on the engine's better. I had one of those cars, and I had to rebuild it in 60,000 miles because it had worn itself out. You had to change spark plugs every 7,000 or 8,000 miles.
Uh-huh.
You wouldn't put up with that today. And the cars we have today are just so much better. And, I'm not a tree hugger by any means, but if you pull up at a stoplight and there's something in front of you that's blubbering fuel smoke out the tailpipes and it chokes you to death and you want to get away from it.
Right.
So it's forced everything to get better. And certainly if you go to China and try and walk out on the street and take a breath, you'll know that we've really helped ourselves over here.
Okay. Have you been out there? Is it pretty bad? I mean, I've never been to China.
It's terrible.
Okay.
It's terrible. I mean, you can, sometimes you can't even see, 50 yards across the street.
Wow. Okay.
Because the air's so bad, and you come back and it takes you 2 or 3 weeks before you can breathe properly. So, I know that we've come a long way. Sometimes you wish that they would do it in a different manner and they wouldn't be so heavy-handed. If you took all of our cars that, let's say that the RPM Act is meant to address, that wouldn't produce as much pollution as dry cleaners produce.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
And nobody says anything about them. But we're visible, we're in their face, it's just something that they go after. So I believe that the EPA and the government legislative side is going to be with us forever.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to learn how to work with it as opposed to fighting against it. Things like the RPM Act, you have to fight because they're very fundamental. But I think we're going to have to learn how to adapt ourselves to some of those rules.
Okay.
And in the big picture, we'll get better as a result.
Awesome. And I think I even forgot to mention that you were actually you were a chairman of the board for SEMA. So it's not like you were just working for SEMA. You were like the leader of SEMA, right?
I spent 6 years on the board in just a regular board seat, and then 2 years incoming, 2 years as the chairman, and 2 years outgoing. So I had a 6-year stint at the executive level.
Okay.
So I've done my duty there as well.
Okay. And you said you were involved with schools and getting people into our industry, not just like interested in racing. So what do you guys do to attract people to like the technician level, and as well as the technical engineering and business people that our industry needs? What do you do to attract those people?
Well, you have to do it at all different levels, and the most important thing, I guess, is just being visible. I met a couple of weeks ago with a group that I used to work with. They were at NASCAR years ago, and they have formed a foundation that goes out and talks to high school kids' parents about coming to work in our industry. And, for so many years, it was believed that you have to go to college. If you don't go to college, you're going to be a failure. Well, you don't. I'll put it a different way. I think everybody should go to college, or everybody should learn every day. However, everybody can't have what this imaginary college job would be.
Right.
Somebody's got to sit there and run machines. Somebody's got to work on the cars. Somebody's got to do all that stuff. And it's not too bad. We probably have some guys back here that work in our shop that never finished high school that make a pretty darn good living because they found what fits them. So there's groups now that are going to high school kids' parents saying, look, don't dissuade the kid. If he decides he wants to go into this industry, give it a look. At least see what it's about, because we've got some careers that are pretty good. I work with a guy by the name of Doug Herbert, has a program that he does with high school kids on safe driving. Doug had 2 of his kids were killed in a car wreck here a number of years ago, so he pretty much has devoted his life to working with that group. And he does things all over the country with high school kids, and it's a really good way not only to teach them how to be safe driving, but to say, hey, this high performance world is pretty cool. I work with you were in SAE, so you may be familiar with their Formula SAE cars. They actually build cars and race them.
Yeah, I did that a couple years.
Okay, well, I may have been a judge on one of your teams. I don't know. I do the judging from time to time. So,
okay.
At every chance that we have to tell our story, I think we have to tell our story to the younger kids and show them that this is a pretty cool industry to be involved in. And, having a car that's your own freedom and you can do as you want, that's pretty cool as well.
Awesome. What's something you struggle with business, and how do you deal with it moving forward?
Probably finding people is the biggest challenge, and that's not That's not just something in our company. It's what I hear everywhere.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And my job is more trying to develop people and give them tools and let them do their job. And I wish I wish I could go to the library or go to Google and said, how do you find good people, and it give you the answer. But I don't know that there is that.
No.
You again, in the more that you're out looking in these high schools, talking to these kids, I spend some time at a university in South Carolina that's got an automotive higher education program.
Okay.
For master's and PhD students, and I spend some time down there, and a lot of times you're able to get the pick of the crop and try and find good people to help you go into the future. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is finding people to carry the baton,
mm-hmm.
and then spending your time going out looking for them at an early age. That's how I'm trying to work with it.
Okay. Yeah, and you're definitely not alone with trying to find people. I think that's
I tell you,
universal.
I don't think it's any difference if you have a shoe store that's selling women's shoes to what we do. I think it's all the same.
Yep. So do you have a 1-year plan for the business?
I guess we're in the middle of the 1-year plan of reinventing ourselves on the customer service side of things.
Okay.
And that included finishing up our software implementation. It included bringing in our distribution center and making all that work together, and pretty much just getting our service level back to what our customers expect. We're coming close to the end of that. One of our short-term things is to divest ourselves of some things that don't really fit what we do.
Okay.
And so we can keep our eye on keep focused, I guess.
Gotcha. On
the things that we should be best at. And then as we move beyond that, we'll look for some new challenges.
Okay. So that moves into the 5-year plan. Are you guys looking towards the electric car vehicle growth?
Okay.
What are you guys looking for 5 years out?
Well, we'd be foolish to think that there's never going to be electric cars as part of the plan. Again, I talked about the university down at Clemson,
mm-hmm.
and they have a project actually of building an electric car that is a high performance car. So we worked with them, and the Tesla's a pretty badass car, and whenever they have 2 Teslas, one of them's going to want to run faster than the other one. So we got to just find how we make that work.
Exactly.
And that's the fundamental thing about anybody in our industry. They want to be a little faster than the guy next to them. And we have to work with somebody that knows more about batteries or motors or whatever to try and help ourselves get better. So our product in the long haul future may not be a camshaft and a lifter and a valve spring, but it'll be something that actuates a motor. It'll be something that helps a battery get better. It'll be something that helps that performance of that vehicle. Now, having said that, I'd be surprised if, our industry is really fairly small.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at the big picture of in the world of what's going on. So there's going to be a fairly strong, healthy performance market for internal combustion engines for a long time.
For sure, yeah.
And there's a lot of opportunities to be taken advantage of during that period of time. And I'll certainly be long gone from the world by the time IC engines aren't an issue. But I think even some of these youngsters that are coming up through high school and all will be working on gasoline IC engines and performance of them throughout their careers. So I think it's still going to be pretty strong for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and we like to take action on Do It for a Living. Can you suggest an action item our listeners can take away to improve their situation?
The one thing that I tell people, and this is just in general in life, I touched on it earlier, is whatever you're doing, whether it be with a product or in your personal life or whatever, try and be better tomorrow than you were today. Many years ago, I was talking to an old guy about camshafts, and he used to work at Holman Moody, which was the original Ford NASCAR power place in the whole world. They were the horsepower part of the world.
Okay.
And this guy worked there, and he asked me what the best camshaft for this particular engine was, and I told him. He said, "No, you're wrong." And I thought, who the hell is this old guy telling me I'm wrong? I know about camshafts, and he's telling me he's wrong. Well, he said the best cam that you'll make, or the best cam for this engine, is the one you make tomorrow. And if you're doing your job and you're creating products and you're doing everything you can do, tomorrow's cam will always be better than today's cam. So I guess my action item is to be better tomorrow, to do your job, make your parts better, make your service better, make yourself better, and don't ever stop. Don't ever go as fast as you can go, because you never get there.
Okay, and I want to move on to our quick answer questions here. So these are just say whatever the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, that could get us in trouble.
Tell us a game-changing product you've seen in the last year.
One of the game-changing parts that we've been involved in is a camshaft for the LS engine that passes all the emission standard, a 50-state legal camshaft that really makes power. They're finishing up the final paperwork right now, but we've got a cam that will be 50-state legal in almost 2,000 applications that makes anywhere between 30 and 50 horsepower. It's pretty darn good.
I bet that's got to be a huge accomplishment too, because California market is quite large.
Well, and then if you think about the RPM Act and what that means.
Right.
They've actually said if I make a cam that will fit in, if it physically fits in a car in California, it's considered a street cam.
Mm-hmm.
So that's bizarre, but still, that's a game changer. Whether you're a warehouse or whether you're a consumer or whether you're a manufacturer, having 50-state legal stuff is on the horizon going to be some of the biggest stuff we can do.
Yeah, for sure. And then what software are you guys using daily? What was it called?
Well, it's called S2K. It's a little small company up in New York. And, the software, and we may have made a mistake by going with them, but they concentrated on customer service more than they do manufacturing and so forth.
Okay.
But it's a pretty all-encompassing ERP, and I've got a couple of our manufacturing things on a more specific manufacturing software, but for the most part, that S2K is the one that we use.
Okay. And are you a phone guy? Do you have a favorite app that you use daily?
Like I told you, I like a dial on my phone, and I don't think they had apps on dial phones. I mean, I use some of that stuff, but I'm not addicted to it.
Okay.
I mean, my daughter, if she's not on Facebook 80% of the time in her day, then she's lost. But I don't even know how to work Facebook, so I'm not much of an app guy.
Okay. What's your favorite shop tool then? You gotta still have some favorite tools working on cars, huh?
Well, in the day, I probably had more satisfaction running a dyno or something like that. I can probably run almost everything in the shop other than the CNC stuff, but I probably like some of the measurement stuff. We recently did a very concentrated thing on surface finish of cams.
Okay.
And we had to build a machine to measure you couldn't go buy what we wanted to measure the surface finish of a cam. So we had to build a machine. And, the more you study, the more you know that you need this thing to do. So we really got involved in that. And here recently, that's been the most fun thing to be involved with.
Very interesting. Okay. And what kind of car are you driving?
Well, that's pretty ho-hum. I just drive a plain Jane stock Tahoe. But I did see where they're coming up with a performance Tahoe that'll be available in a few months that could get kind of fun.
Okay.
So pretty much just plain stock thing, but then we've got a lot of toys around here that we can drive and play with.
I was going to say, do you have any race cars that you can mess around with?
No race cars, but we've got some pretty good, pretty nice, fun street cars, and those things will get you put in about any jail in the country.
Awesome. Okay, and then what do you see the future of automotive performance as?
Well, I touched on before, anytime they make two cars, somebody's going to want to outrun the other one.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it may be different than it has than we've known it for the last 50, 60 years, but it'll be the same in that there'll be people that want to make what they've got different. And then we're going to have to adapt ourselves to whatever that different means. We're going to have to learn that and go forward. But in general, you know, the SEMA show has never been bigger. The PRI show has never been bigger. So there are no indications that this thing is tipping over on us. I think for the foreseeable future, it's going to be just as strong as it's ever been.
Awesome. And how do we connect with you and your company?
Our website is compcams.com. I've got 40, 50 people something on the phone all the time. So it's, you know, give us a call. The website's probably as easy as anything anymore, and just get on there and sort of search around and figure out what you're looking at and go from there.
Awesome. Well, Scooter, I really appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us.
No problem. I've enjoyed it, and anything I can do, just let me know.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app. Tap the subscribe button. When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high-level